The first time most people noticed her, the room went quiet without anyone asking for silence. Conversations slowed, smiles faded, and shoulders stiffened. It always happened that way when she entered. Staff members lowered their eyes, guests straightened their posture, and managers suddenly remembered urgent tasks somewhere else. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. Fear followed her like a shadow. She was the fiancée of one of the richest men in the country, a billionaire whose name alone opened doors and closed mouths. But it was not his money that made people nervous. It was her presence. Calm, sharp, and unreadable. She never raised her voice, never caused scenes. Yet a single look from her could make a grown professional feel small. People said she had standards no one could meet. Others whispered that she enjoyed watching people fail. Over time, fear turned into stories, and stories turned into truth in people's minds. The hotel where this story begins was one of the most expensive properties in the city. Marble floors, glass walls, soft music floating through the air. Everything was designed to feel perfect. But behind the beauty, the staff lived under constant pressure, especially when she was expected to arrive. Schedules changed, meetings were called, and warnings were repeated again and again. One mistake could cost someone their job. On a warm morning, just after sunrise, a young woman stood near the service entrance holding a simple folder. Inside were her work papers neatly arranged. She wore a clean uniform, freshly ironed, and shoes that were slightly worn but polished carefully. This was her first day as a server at the hotel. She had arrived early, not because she was nervous, but because she liked to be prepared. While waiting, she watched the staff move around her. Some walked fast, others looked tired, and a few whispered quietly. She noticed fear in their voices without fully understanding why. One of the older staff members leaned closer to her and spoke in a low tone. "Just do your job, keep your head down, and don't ask questions." She nodded politely. She had heard similar advice before in other jobs. Still, something about the tension here felt different. As the morning went on, she learned the basic rules quickly. Where to stand, how to carry trays, how to speak to guests. Everything had a system. Everything had an order. And everything, it seemed, could fall apart if the wrong person was upset. Around mid-morning, a supervisor gathered the staff briefly. The message was short and serious. The fiancé would be arriving later that day for a private meeting and dinner. Everyone knew what that meant. Extra care, extra silence, extra fear. The new server listened quietly. She didn't ask questions. She didn't react. She simply stored the information in her mind and went back to work. Throughout the day, she noticed how people changed whenever her name was mentioned. Jokes stopped. Smiles disappeared. Even experienced staff members became unsure of themselves. Confused her. She had worked in busy places before, some with difficult guests, but this felt deeper than that. This was not about rudeness. This was about reputation. Late in the afternoon, as she cleaned a table near the window, she overheard two staff members talking. "She got someone fired last month," one whispered. "For what?" the other asked. "Nothing big, just a small delay." The new server paused for a moment, then continued wiping the table. She did not believe everything she heard, but she remembered it. As evening approached, the hotel changed its mood. Lights softened. Music grew slower. The air felt heavier. The fiancé arrived quietly, without cameras or noise, but everyone knew the exact moment she stepped inside. The new server saw her from a distance for the first time. Tall posture, calm walk, eyes that seemed to notice everything without effort. She did not look angry or cruel. She looked tired, but it was the kind of tired that came from carrying weight for too long. Their eyes did not meet, but the server felt something unexpected. Not fear, curiosity. Assignments were given quickly. The new server was not supposed to be anywhere near the private dining area. She was placed on general service, away from the important guests. That was the plan. But plans change. A sudden shortage happened when another server felt unwell and had to leave. The supervisor looked around, stressed and out of options. His eyes landed on the new server. "You," he said quietly. You'll assist near the private section. Just follow instructions. Don't speak unless spoken to. She nodded calmly. As she walked closer to the private dining area, she felt the tension rise. Her hands remained steady, her breathing slow. She reminded herself why she was there. To work. To serve. Nothing more. Inside the private space, the atmosphere was controlled and silent. The fiancé sat at the table, reviewing documents, not touching the food yet. The billionaire was not present. This was her space, her time. The new server approached carefully, placing water on the table with smooth, practiced movement. No shaking. No rush. She stepped back respectfully. For a moment nothing happened. Then the fiancé looked up. Their eyes met for the first time. The room felt smaller. The fiancé studied her, not with anger, but with focus. Like someone reading a page slowly, looking for meaning. Is this your first day? She asked. The question surprised the new server, but her answer came easily. Yes. There was no apology in her voice. No fear. Just honesty. The fiancé nodded slightly and returned her attention to the table. That should have been the end of it. But something had already shifted. The new server stepped back into position, aware that everyone nearby had noticed the exchange. She could feel eyes on her, waiting for a reaction, waiting for trouble. None came. The rest of the service continued quietly. No complaints. No tension. When the fiancé finally stood to leave, she paused for a brief moment, then walked away without a word. After she left, the staff released breaths they didn't realize they were holding. Someone whispered, "You're lucky." Someone else said, "You survived." The new server simply nodded and returned to her tasks. She did not know it yet, but that small moment had planted something powerful. A quiet beginning. A change no one expected. And in a place ruled by fear, that was enough to start everything. The next morning felt different, though nothing on the surface had changed. The same marble floors reflected the lights, the same soft music filled the air, and the same staff moved through their routines. Yet something unseen lingered, like a quiet question no one dared to ask. The new server noticed it right away. People looked at her differently now. Not with warmth, not with jealousy, but with curiosity mixed with disbelief. She had served the fiancé on her first day and walked away unharmed. For many, that alone felt impossible. She did not let it affect her. She focused on her work, checking tables, adjusting settings, and listening carefully to instructions. She believed that consistency mattered more than attention. Still, she could not ignore the whispers that followed her through the halls. She spoke to her, someone said quietly. And nothing happened, another replied. She didn't even look scared. The server kept her head steady and her movements calm. Fear, she had learned long ago, often came from stories passed from one person to another. She preferred to trust what she saw with her own eyes. Later that day, she was assigned to afternoon service near the lounge area. It was quieter there, filled mostly with business guests and a few regulars. She enjoyed these hours. They allowed her to observe people without pressure. As she arranged cups on a tray, she noticed the fiancé across the room, seated alone near the window. No assistants, no guards nearby, just her and a tablet resting on the table. The sight surprised the server. This was not the image she had been warned about. For a moment, the server considered asking her supervisor if someone else should attend to that table. But before she could speak, the supervisor looked at her and nodded. "Go ahead," he said quietly. "Just be careful." She walked toward the table with steady steps. Her heart beat faster, but not from fear, from focus. She placed the tray down gently and waited. The fiancé looked up, recognition passing through her eyes. "You again," she said. "Yes," the server replied. There was no smile, but there was no coldness either. Just awareness. "Tea," the fiancé said simply. The server nodded and prepared it exactly as requested. No rush, no hesitation. When she returned, she placed the cup carefully and stepped back. For several seconds, nothing was said. The silence felt heavy but not uncomfortable. "You seem calm," the fiancé finally said. The server thought for a moment before answering. "I try to be." "Why?" The question was unexpected. "Because people notice everything when you are nervous," the server replied. "And they make mistakes when they are afraid." The fiancé studied her again, this time longer. Something unreadable crossed her face. "You are not like the others," she said. The server lowered her gaze slightly, respectful but not shrinking. "Everyone is different." The fiancé picked up her tea but did not drink it right away. "Most people avoid me," the server answered honestly. "I noticed. Does that not bother you?" "No," the server said softly. "It tells me they are carrying something heavy." The fiancé looked away toward the window. Outside, the city moved without pause. Cars passed. People walked. Life continued. For a brief moment, the strict control in her posture loosened. "People think they know who I am," she said. "They rarely ask." The server did not interrupt. She knew when silence was more respectful than words. "I did not choose to become someone others fear," the fiancé continued. "But fear is easier than understanding." The server felt the weight behind the words. Not anger, not pride, something closer to exhaustion. "I think," the server said carefully, "that fear grows when people stop listening." The fiancé glanced at her, surprised. "You listen," she said. "I try," the server replied. Another pause followed. Then the fiancé took a sip of her tea. Her expression softened slightly. "This is good," she said. "Thank you." When the server stepped away, she felt eyes watching her again. Staff members pretended to work while clearly observing from a distance. No raised voices followed. No complaints. The fiancé finished her tea and left the lounge quietly. That evening, the supervisor called the server aside. "Whatever you're doing," he said in a low voice, "keep doing it." She nodded, unsure what else to say. Over the next few days, small moments repeated themselves. The fiancé appeared more often, sometimes alone, sometimes in meetings. And each time, the server was assigned nearby. It was not official, but it was clear. Their conversations remained brief but honest. Never personal. Never dramatic. Yet each exchange carried a sense of respect that others noticed. The staff began to relax, just a little. Smiles returned. Movements became less rushed. Fear loosened its grip, though it did not disappear completely. One afternoon, as the server cleared a table, she overheard a guest speaking harshly to a junior staff member. The tone was sharp and dismissive. Before the situation could grow worse, the fiancé stepped in. "Please speak with respect," she said calmly. The guest froze, recognizing her immediately. The room went silent. The fiancée did not raise her voice. She did not threaten. She simply waited. The guest apologized and lowered his tone. The junior staff member looked stunned. So did everyone else. The server watched quietly, understanding now that the fear surrounding the fiancé had hidden something important. Strength did not always mean cruelty. Sometimes it meant control. That night, as the server finished her shift, she felt a strange sense of responsibility. She had not come here to change anything. She had only come to work. Yet change had begun, and she sensed that something bigger was coming. Something that would test not only the fiancé, but everyone who had judged her from a distance. The story was no longer about fear alone. It was about truth waiting to be seen. By the end of the week, the hotel no longer felt like the same place. The fear had not vanished, but it no longer ruled every breath. People still moved carefully, but they no longer flinched at every sound of footsteps. The change was slow and quiet, like light entering a room through a narrow window. The server felt it too. She noticed how people greeted her now, not with whispers, but with small nods and brief smiles. Some asked simple questions. Others only watched, as if trying to understand what she had done differently. She had no clear answer for them. She had not challenged anyone. She had not tried to stand out. She had only remained herself. One afternoon, the fiancé arrived earlier than usual. The lobby was busy, and the staff moved quickly to keep everything running smoothly. The server was arranging glasses when she saw the fiancé pause near the entrance, scanning the room as if searching for something. Their eyes met. The fiancé gave a slight nod. Not a command. Not a test. Just a signal. The server approached. "Walk with me," the fiancé said quietly. They moved side by side through a quieter hallway. Staff members noticed but pretended not to. This was not something they had seen before. "You seem comfortable here," the fiancé said after a moment. "I am learning," the server replied. "Most people learn to hide," the fiancé said. "You don't." The server considered her words. "Hiding takes energy." A faint pause followed. "So does being honest," the fiancé said. They reached a small sitting area near a private garden. Sunlight filtered through glass panels, casting soft shapes on the floor. The fiancé gestured for the server to sit. This was unusual. Very unusual. "You can take a moment," the fiancé said. The server hesitated, then sat carefully. "I don't normally do this," the fiancé continued. "But you make it difficult to keep distance." The server looked at her, attentive but calm. "Distance keeps people safe," she said. "Does it?" "Sometimes," the server replied. "Other times, it keeps them alone." The fiancé leaned back, exhaling slowly. For the first time, the sharp edge in her posture softened. "When I was younger," she said, "I learned quickly that kindness is often mistaken for weakness, and weakness invites harm." The server listened without interrupting. "So I built rules," the fiancé continued. "Standards, silence, control. People obeyed. Fear followed. And eventually that became my identity." "That sounds heavy," the server said gently. "It is," the fiancé replied. "But it keeps chaos away." "Does it keep peace?" the server asked. The question hung in the air. "I don't know," the fiancé said finally. They sat in silence for a moment. Birds could be heard outside. The city felt far away. "You are not afraid of me," the fiancé said. "I am careful," the server answered. "There is a difference." The fiancé smiled, just slightly. It was brief but real. "People see power and assume cruelty," she said. "They forget that power often grows from pain." The server nodded. "Pain teaches, whether we want it to or not." Footsteps approached, and the moment ended. The fiancé stood, returning to her composed self. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" the server asked. "For not trying to fix me," the fiancé replied. The rest of the day passed without incident, but the staff could feel the shift. The fiancé spoke more. Not much, but enough. Instructions were clear, not cold. Corrections were firm, not sharp. People noticed. That evening, a small issue arose during dinner service. A table had been double booked, and tempers rose. A guest raised his voice, drawing attention. Staff froze, waiting for consequences. The fiancé stepped forward. "Let us solve this," she said calmly. Her voice carried authority without threat. The situation settled quickly. The guest relaxed. The staff moved again. The server watched, understanding now what others had missed. The fiancé did not enjoy control. She relied on it. Later, as the server cleared plates, the fiancé approached once more. "Tomorrow," she said, "there will be a private event. Important people. High expectations." The server nodded. "I want you nearby," the fiancé added. The words sent a quiet wave through the staff. Trust like that was rare. "I'll do my best," the server said. "That is all I ask," the fiancé replied. That night, the server walked home under dim streetlights, thinking about the day. She had not planned to become involved in anyone's life beyond her duties. Yet she felt connected now, not through obligation, but through understanding. She knew tomorrow would matter, not because of money or power, but because truth has a way of revealing itself when pressure rises. And something told her that the event ahead would bring the past into the open. For the first time, fear was no longer the strongest presence in the hotel. Something quieter had taken its place. trust. The day of the private event arrived with a tension that could be felt before anyone spoke. The hotel looked flawless, but beneath the shine, nerves ran high. Important guests were expected. Decisions made today could affect reputations, deals, and futures. Everyone knew it. The server arrived early, as she always did. She checked every detail twice, not out of fear, but out of care. Chairs were aligned. Glasses were spotless. The room felt ready, yet unfinished, like it was holding its breath. The fiancée arrived shortly after. Her posture was composed, her expression calm, but the server noticed the smallest signs of strain. A slower step, a longer pause. Today mattered to her more than she let on. "You're here," the fiancée said quietly when she saw the server. "Yes," the server replied. "Stay close," the fiancée said. It was not an order. It was a request. Guests began to arrive in waves. Polite smiles filled the room. Soft laughter followed practiced greetings. Conversations overlapped, careful and measured. The billionaire entered last, greeting everyone with confidence. His presence shifted the energy instantly. The server moved smoothly through the room, listening more than speaking. She noticed small things others missed. A guest who seemed impatient. Another who watched too closely. A staff member whose hands shook while pouring water. As dinner progressed, a problem emerged quietly. A seating arrangement had been changed without approval. Two guests who should not have been placed together now sat side by side. Tension rose between them, subtle but sharp. The fiancé noticed. So did the server. The fiancé's jaw tightened for just a moment. The server stepped closer. "I can adjust," the server whispered. The fiancé hesitated. Then she nodded. The server moved quickly but calmly, speaking to staff with quiet confidence. A chair was shifted. A conversation redirected. The tension softened without drawing attention. A potential conflict faded before it could grow. But not all problems could be handled so easily. Midway through the evening, one of the guests raised a concern about a past decision involving the billionaire's company. The tone was polite, but the intention was sharp. Others listened closely. This was not casual conversation. This was a test. The room fell silent. The fiancée stood. "I will address this," she said. The billionaire glanced at her, surprised. He did not interrupt. She spoke clearly without defensiveness. She acknowledged mistakes made in the past and explained the steps taken to correct them. There was no denial, no blame, only truth. Murmurs followed. Some guests exchanged looks. Others nodded slowly. Then someone spoke from across the table. "Easy to say now," the guest remarked. The air tightened. The fiancée did not raise her voice. "Accountability is not about timing," she said. "It is about action." The guest leaned back, considering. The server watched closely. She saw the strength it took to stand in that moment. This was not the strength of fear. This was the strength of honesty. As the discussion moved on, the server noticed something else. A staff member at the far end of the room looked panicked. A document had gone missing, one that contained sensitive details for the event. Panic spread quietly. The server approached calmly. "Tell me what happened," she said. The staff member whispered the situation. The server thought quickly. She remembered seeing a guest earlier picking up papers by mistake. She moved toward the lounge area and found the guest reviewing the document, unaware of the trouble caused. "I believe that belongs to the event," the server said politely. The guest looked embarrassed and handed it over immediately. Crisis avoided. When the server returned the document, the fiancée looked at her with something new in her eyes. Not just trust, gratitude. As the night went on, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations became more open. Laughter sounded real. Guests who had arrived cautious now seemed relaxed. At one point, the billionaire pulled the fiancée aside. "You didn't have to step in like that," he said. "I wanted to," she replied. He studied her. "They respect you." She glanced briefly toward the server. "They always did. They were just afraid." Near the end of the evening, a guest approached the fiancée. "I owe you an apology," the guest said. I misjudged you. The fiancé nodded. That happens. The words were simple, but the moment was powerful. As guests departed, relief washed over the staff. The event had succeeded. More than that, something had changed permanently. Later, as the room was cleared and silence returned, the fiancé stood near the window. The server approached carefully. You handled today well, the server said. So did you, the fiancé replied. You saw things before they became problems. That's part of serving, the server said. No, the fiancé said softly. That's part of caring. They stood quietly for a moment. I've spent years being someone others fear, the fiancé said. I thought it kept things under control. And now? The server asked. And now I see that control without connection leaves emptiness, she replied. The server nodded. People respond to what they feel, not just what they hear. The fiancé smiled, not briefly this time, but fully. Tomorrow, she said, things will be different. The server believed her. As she left the hotel that night, the server felt a sense of quiet pride. She had not changed the world. She had not sought recognition, but she had helped reveal something true. Fear had ruled for a long time, but understanding had finally stepped into the light. And the final chapter was waiting. The morning after the event felt lighter, as if the building itself had exhaled. Sunlight moved freely through the windows, and the lobby sounded different. Not louder, but warmer. Staff greeted each other without hesitation. Laughter returned in small, honest moments. The change was real. The server arrived early again, as she always did. She paused for a moment near the entrance, taking it all in. The fear that once lived in the corners of the room had faded. It had not vanished completely, but it no longer controlled every step. People noticed her when she walked by, but not in the same way as before. There was no disbelief now. There was appreciation. Some nodded. A few smiled. One quietly said thank you. She accepted it with grace and continued working. The fiancé arrived later than usual. No rush, no tension. She walked through the lobby with calm confidence, stopping briefly to greet a few staff members. This alone would have been unthinkable just days earlier. When she saw the server, she paused. Walk with me, she said gently. They moved toward a quiet corner near the window. The city outside looked the same, but everything inside felt new. You changed the way people see me, the fiancé said. The server shook her head. They changed when they were ready. The fiancé considered this. Perhaps. But you showed them another way. The server thought for a moment. I think people just needed permission to stop being afraid. The fiancé smiled softly. Fear can become a habit. It can, the server agreed. They stood in silence for a moment, comfortable and unguarded. I used to believe respect only came from control, the fiancé said. Now I see it can come from trust. That kind lasts longer, the server replied. Later that day, the fiancé gathered the staff briefly. It was informal. No raised platform. No strict lines. Just people standing together. I want to thank you, she said. Not for obedience, but for your work, your patience, and your honesty. The room was silent, not from fear, but from surprise. I know I have been difficult, she continued. I believed it was necessary. I was wrong about some things. No one spoke, but many listened closely. From now on, she said, this place will be guided by standards and respect, not fear. Something shifted permanently in that moment. The server watched from the side, feeling neither pride nor ownership. Only relief. This was not about her. It never had been. As days passed, the changes continued. Staff turnover slowed. Conversations felt easier. Problems were discussed instead of hidden. The hotel did not lose its excellence. It gained something better. One afternoon, the fiancé asked the server to sit with her for tea. You won't always be here, the fiancé said. The server smiled gently. No. What will you do? I'm not sure yet, the server replied. But I'll do it with the same care. The fiancé nodded. You have a way of reminding people who they are. The server looked down. Sometimes people already know. They just forget. Weeks later, the server submitted her notice. It was not sudden. It was honest. On her last day, the staff gathered quietly to say goodbye. No speeches. No grand gestures. Just sincere words. The fiancée approached her one final time. "You'll always have a place here," she said. "Thank you," the server replied. "But I think it's time to help somewhere else." The fiancée nodded, understanding. As the server walked out of the hotel for the last time, she did not look back. Not because she didn't care, but because she didn't need to. Inside, the hotel continued to thrive. The fiancé continued to grow, and the fear that once ruled the halls became nothing more than a memory. Not erased, but understood. And that made all the difference.